up, guys? You are tuned into the Casual Wrestling Smackdown Post Show. I am Nerdy D, and if you are listening to this, you are part of the CWC, and this is the show where we join together to ask and answer the biggest questions coming out of Friday Night SmackDown this week. But before we get to that, do me a favor and tap the like button. It only takes 2 seconds, and it lets YouTube know that you are listening, and it continues to grow the Casual Wrestling Army as we continue to chip away at the IWC stronghold over online wrestling conversation. Let's jump right into housekeeping. Not a lot to talk about this week as far as housekeeping goes. Couple things in the work, but we'll talk about those as they become more relevant. Still merchandise available on casualwrestling.com. I had a little idea that was given to me by DJ Wavy D, and that was I talked about doing like a featured shirt every week or every couple of weeks based on things I say on the podcast. He kind of talked about and discussed maybe doing a poster, and I think financially that's probably a lot cheaper and kind of a fun way to commemorate different episodes of the podcast. So I'm probably going to be doing a poster from each episode that kind of commemorates the things we talked about each week. So let's jump right into it. Question number 1. Nerdy D, do you feel like the Bloodline have lost any momentum, or are they picking back up where they left off with Roman Reigns returning? Question 2 to that is, how do you feel about Roman Reigns continuing to miss SmackDowns even though he just returned back to wrestling programming? So inevitably, when you do a story like the Bloodline that spans over this 3 to 4 year period, which is crazy to say that it's been that long, that a single story has spanned that long, but it actually doesn't even look like the story is ending anytime soon. When you do a story that long, there is inevitably going to be peaks and valleys within that story. It's what makes, every valley in the story is what makes the peak feel that much more special. So yeah, Roman's gone 3 to 5 months. And that leaves Paul Heyman, Solo Sikoa, and Jimmy Uso to kind of hold down the fort and keep the ship afloat. And they did as good as they could do in the story that they were given. I feel like there was a little bit of a cheat code for Jey Uso. He got to make his way over to Monday Night Raw, which gave him access to new stories and new faces that made him feel fresh. While, look, Jimmy Uso and Solo Sikoa were kind of left on an island to fend for themselves and keep the Bloodline relevant for the past, what has it been, 3 months? And I would say that they did a fairly good job. I think with Roman returning, they kept the ship as afloat as you can without your main guy. Jimmy Uso reinvented himself. And what I will say is one of the most underrated character evolutions of all time in professional wrestling. I think it's underlooked how much of a character change Jimmy has portrayed in the last couple of weeks. Because when Sami Zayn left the Bloodline, the comedic relief in the Bloodline was just sucked out of the room. They immediately went back to being this uber sensitive faction. And they became no fun and all business. And I think it took a little element away from what made them special on a week-to-week basis. And now Jimmy Uso has found that missing piece. He's found a way to be entertaining, all while still feeling like a vital and intricate part of the Bloodline. And I think that's important. That needs to be noted. All of the little football references and the way he's able to interact with Paul Heyman and Roman Reigns, those are classic. We're going to remember those. I think they're going a little bit unnoticed right now, but I think in the long run, one of the things we'll look back is this is where Jimmy kind of elevated himself. Jey Uso gets all the credit. Everybody wants to jump and say Jey Uso is the next big thing, but I like to put my cards behind Jimmy. I think that Jimmy has had the more natural and fun evolution as far as characters in the Bloodline go. Now, Solo Sikoa, he's a character that's extremely intimidating. He gets to play an enforcer, but I always have felt like Solo kind of lacks that, like, look at me. He doesn't have that kind of, He's a great character within a faction, but I don't think that Solo's ever going to be that guy. And that's okay. Not everybody's going to be that guy. But Jimmy Uso Jimmy Uso's the guy that kind of keeps the eyes on the bloodline. He's the guy that makes you pay attention to Paul Heyman. Paul does it on his own, but you know what I'm saying. He definitely brings in, there's an entertainment value to Jimmy Uso that exists when Roman's not on screen. Now, had you asked me in the last few months if I thought the bloodline had cooled off, sure, I'd say, yeah, I think, but that's natural. That's the natural progression for a group that has been front and center for 4 years. For every peak, there's going to be a valley, and we definitely are coming out of one of those valleys. We all knew what WWE was prepping us for. We've known for a while that we were headed towards Jimmy versus Jey Uso. And we were kind of at the apex of that story. And then WWE kind of pulled the carpet out from under us and was like, hey, we're going to save that for a bigger event, maybe even Crown Jewel, right? And that was okay, but it definitely took a lot of the momentum that we had coming out of the summer. And it was like, all right, hold on. We're going to put the brakes on the bloodline and we're going to let things play out. And we're going to put this on the shoulders of Jimmy, Solo, and Paul Heyman to carry the load. Now, I don't know that all of these matches are going to take place. But if you look at Crown Jewel, the bloodline could be featured pretty heavily throughout that event. There could be 3 possible high-profile bloodline matches at Crown Jewel. We could get Solo and Cena. We could get Jimmy and Jay. And we could get Roman versus LA Knight. Or we know we're getting Roman versus LA Knight. So we know one, there's possibility for 2 more. Those are high-marketed matches. Those are high-profile. Now, if you're asking me, I would prefer to hold off on Jimmy and Jay. I think if we're going to do Solo and Cena and we're going to do LA Knight and Roman, let's let Jimmy and Jay simmer a little bit. Let's save that. You know what? We waited this long. Let's save that for WrestleMania. Let's let it simmer. Let's let it build up. Let's go ahead and go into Survivor Series and do Team Raw versus Team SmackDown. Jay on one side, Jimmy on the other. Even though I know the dirt sheets are all reporting that that's not going to be a thing. I call bullshit. Dirt sheets report something. The opposite's usually going to happen. But the thing is, every time Roman Reigns shows back up, the bloodline moved back to the front of the importance chart as far as WWE goes. So yeah, were we in a cold spot? Sure. But Roman's back. Roman reminds us all, he's the top dog. Everybody else needs to fall in line. This is Roman Reigns' show. Until Roman officially hangs it up, SmackDown is Roman's home. Now, do I love that Roman Reigns takes nights off, even after coming back, from these long hiatus? No, I don't love that. I think that, it would be nice for Roman's presence to be felt, even if it was like a pre-tape backstage segment or some kind of promo on SmackDown. I don't understand why they can't pre-tape, multiple segments to use moving forward on the nights where they know Roman Reigns not going to be there. I don't even think there's a problem with actually just hearing conversation between Paul Heyman and Roman Reigns. Just maybe even 10 seconds of Roman Reigns' voice is enough to just remind us, hey, the big dog's lurking. The head of the table is still a part of SmackDown. When he just completely disappears, sometimes it feels a little bit like abandonment. I'm not going to lie. When Roman Reigns leaves for 3 months at a time, there might be some abandonment issues we get as casual wrestling fans where we go, oh man, Roman don't love us no more. So it would be nice. It would be nice if he was on the phone, if there was a FaceTime from Roman Reigns, if there was a promo cut from his house or the Island of Relevancy or whatever. It would just be nice. I get it, WWE. I get the mystique at this point of having a champion that is elevated to a level that he gets to show up whenever he wants. It actually, at this point, story-wise, it makes sense. He's ascended above and beyond everybody else on the roster. But it's not lost on me that SmackDown needs Roman Reigns. SmackDown is better when Roman Reigns' presence is felt on the screen in some form or fashion. So I'm hoping this may have been a one-off situation. And as we get closer to Crown Jewel, Roman is a more regular participant on the blue brand. All right, second question of the night. Nerdy D, what did you think of Nick Aldis seemingly going full heel GM and throwing both Jey Uso and Adam Pearce out of the arena on SmackDown? I think this is what I called for last week, right? I think this is another one of those things that you could put in the W column for Nerdy D as far as predictions go. I said it last week. It comes to be. These are the type of things that happen when you listen to this show. And let me go on record. I love this. This is the shit that gets my juices going when I'm watching wrestling. These subtle little things. Sometimes all it takes is one of these little things to turn my opinion around on whether or not I like the show that I'm watching. Having authority figures, it just makes the shows feel important. This was definitely foreshadowing what to expect at Survivor Series. I don't give a shit what the dirt sheets are reporting. I don't care that they're saying WWE is not prepping for Team SmackDown versus Team Raw. Why the fuck not? Because this is being set up too perfectly. You have all of the ducks in place to make this happen. Stop playing around. And let's go one step farther with Nick Aldis. Last week, I called for Nick Aldis to immediately kind of get into a confrontation with Kevin Owens and go head-to-head, but light bulb went off when I was watching SmackDown this week, and I immediately want to change my opinion on that situation. I don't want KO and Nick Aldis to go at it. I want KO to be an enforcer for Nick Aldis. I want KO to enter into this new heel-led GM faction. I want KO to turn heel and just go straight savage on everybody on SmackDown and just do the bidding of the boss. I think that role could absolutely work for Kevin Owens. They've teased the last couple of weeks that Kevin's kind of an unhinged character and his anger was kind of held back by Sami Zayn. I'd like to see the opposite. I'd like to see Nick Aldis kind of step in and go, we're going to unleash you, Kevin. We're going to let that anger bubble to the top, and you are going to take over SmackDown. Now, I hear a lot of people asking, what do you do with LA Knight inevitably when he loses to Roman Reigns? We all know that's happening. You know what? I was able to kind of overcome my urges, and I've never fully bought into the idea. I no need for you guys to step in. I understand LA Knight's not winning. So what do you do with him after he inevitably loses to Roman Reigns at Crown Jewel? You have Nick Aldis cost him that match. In some form or fashion, Nick Aldis gets involved and cost. I don't think it should be the Bloodline. I think it should be Nick Aldis costing LA Knight the match, which will transition us immediately into some kind of story that is babyface versus the Authority. And then it starts to get interesting. You could start to bring fun characters and create. WWE has not had a good heel GM-based faction in quite some time. And I think that you could bring people in. Let me throw some names out. I like the idea of a faction that's Nick Aldis, Logan Paul, Kevin Owens, and let's throw Santos Escobar in there, because why not? I think that group plays well. Don't ask me why. There's just a hunch. I have a feeling that would work. Now, I think the best play for WrestleMania at this point, as far as it comes to LA Knight, is Logan Paul versus LA Knight, WrestleMania 40, United States Championship on the line, and LA Knight going over at the big event, the fans going nuts, and then LA Knight gets to do his best Gunther impersonation, and he tries to make the United States title relevant again. But Nick Aldis as a heel GM just solidifies my stance that SmackDown is the best wrestling show on television right now. No questions asked. But I had a bunch of IWC come into the comment section on my YouTube this week, and they have the audacity to tell me not only is SmackDown not the top show on wrestling, but there was the standard group of IWC that asked me, well, do you even watch AEW? Yeah, dipshits, I do. I've watched it before. I'm not watching it anymore. And based on the ratings you're getting on a weekly basis, most people aren't watching AEW Dynamite anymore. So take that shit and throw it in a garbage can. But there was also this other subsection of the IWC that tried to tell me that Monday Night Raw was the best show in professional wrestling. Now, I don't know. Maybe I'm partial to 2 hours. Maybe 2 hours is the sweet spot of wrestling for me. Or maybe it's that I just love every major person that's in a story on the SmackDown roster. But look at the show. Look at this last SmackDown and tell me this isn't the best thing on wrestling television right now. LA Knight starts the show, gets into it with Paul Heyman. They have a badass segment. Then you roll that into Santos Escobar versus Montez Ford, who are two extremely underrated, high-talent wrestlers, and they have a solid match. From there, we go to John Cena cutting a promo talking about he hasn't won a match in like 2,000 days, tugging at our heartstrings. Then Solo Sikoa comes out to interfere in that. We move from that to Logan Paul. And Rey Mysterio coming face-to-face in the ring. From there, we get a little bit of, it peaks and valleys. We go Cameron Grimes and Dragon Lee, his entrance video is fantastic. The way that Dragon kind of circles around and then opens his mouth and the smoke comes out of the entryway. Like, Dragon Lee, they're going to need a successor to Rey Mysterio. I think everything's there for Dragon Lee. I think it's going to be set up for him to just step in and fill that role. And that's dope, because so far what I've seen from him, I like Dragon Lee. And then you have Theory and Waller who are hella entertaining. They're entertaining. I don't care what you say about them. They're entertaining. So that was kind of the dip. And then we finished off with Io Sky versus Charlotte Flair and the return of Bianca Belair. And somewhere in there during the show, I don't remember exactly where it was, but Pretty Deadly had an amazing video where they cut like an Attitude Era type, what do you call it? Like a vignette or backstage story, whatever. But it was very Attitude Era feeling to me. They make fun wrestling content and they break up this weird mentality that has existed for the last couple of years in WWE, that everything has to be based in this like super reality. And so the Pretty Deadly are a breath of fresh air to me as far as WWE goes, because they don't take themselves that seriously. But that's a hell of a night of wrestling. And then what I do is I go back and I look at Monday Night Raw, and as expected in a 3-hour show, every Monday Night Raw has at least 3 segments that I go bathroom break, and I can take a quick nap. I don't feel like I'm going to miss anything. And what's funny to me is that the IWC, there's a new mantra that they're screaming now that AEW is so far behind in the ratings. And the new mantra of the IWC, which is just fucking absolutely hilarious because they started all this shit. But this new mantra is that tribalism is bad for wrestling. That's hilarious, because tribalism is what creates fandom. Try to tell a Dallas Cowboys fan that they need to go cheer for the Philadelphia Eagles. And then try to explain to them that they need to cheer because, you know what? These guys are all just football players, and we should be happy that these guys that aren't on the Cowboys get to play on another team, and it's just best for football. No, that's pussy mentality. Like, tribalism exists because it's fun to pick a team. It's fun to wear those colors. It's fun to represent a logo. That I like tribalism. Maybe that makes me the bad guy as far as wrestling goes. I like tribalism even within WWE. Like, this is why I like GMs. As of today, officially right now, I'll go on record. I'm Team Smackdown, baby. I am Team Smackdown. I'll continue to report on Raw. I'll continue to give constructive criticism to what I see on Monday Night Raw. But as far as I'm concerned, Team Raw is now the enemy. I am a SmackDown guy. I pledge the allegiance to Nick Aldis in Friday Night SmackDown. So inevitably, when the dirt sheets are wrong and Survivor Series turns out to be Team Raw versus Team SmackDown, you best believe that I'm repping Team Blue. And you better be damn sure that I'll draw a line in the sand as far as the CWC goes. And you guys, you're either with me or against me. If you guys want to jump on that red brand, we could go. We could make it happen. Just let that be known. We rock the blue brand around here, baby. Now, speaking of Survivor Series, man, our savior did it again. There's some sneaky things at play that I didn't even think about as far as booking goes in Survivor Series. I never thought about moving Kevin Owens to SmackDown. I thought, hey, man, they're removing him from Sami Zayn, but you're really just putting him on the opposite side of the ring as Sami Zayn. War Games could still feature a match that has Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn going at each other, and it could feature Kevin Owens becoming unhinged inside that ring and turning on Sami Zayn, inevitably leading to what we all thought was going to happen, and that is Sami Zayn versus Kevin Owens at WrestleMania. Good times are ahead for WWE. I think the winter is not going to be as cold as we thought. If we get CM Punk and Randy Orton and I've heard rumblings of Big E. If all of this shit starts to come back and this all kind of plays out the way I see it playing out, good times are ahead for WWE fans. All right, question number 3. So at the conclusion of this week's SmackDown, all was made right again when WWE brought back Bianca Belair. But I've seen quite a few IWC people online as well as content creators that were pissed off that Bianca Belair came back in the fashion she did. So the question that we're asking this week is, do you think Bianca Belair needs more depth to her character, or is Bianca ready for a heel turn? No, not at all. I think that's all wrong. All these content creators, all these IWC, anybody who wants to argue this, you're wrong. And anyone who doesn't understand this is 100% about marketing, they just don't understand how business works. And I'll go one farther. If you can't understand why Bianca is the way she is, you don't have a daughter. Now, I get it. I get we all think that everything that happens in wrestling should appeal to us personally. Everything that happens in wrestling should make us feel good. We should leave completely satisfied that everything we tasted on screen was partial to what we like as far as wrestling food goes. And believe me, this is not a knock on people, because I'm guilty of that as much or more than any person in the internet wrestling community, in the casual wrestling community, and the content creation community. I am somebody who believes when I watch wrestling, it should all be for me. But here's the problem. When you break it down, when you really think about wrestling, simplicity sells. Simplicity is what is marketable. There is a reason that DC names Batman, or Superman, Superman. Simple words that get right to the point. And Bianca Belair, like John Cena that came before her, they're just real life versions of superheroes. They're WWE superheroes. And sure, when you read comic books, superheroes are these multifaceted, super in-depth characters that have different traits and different reasons and motivations. But every time they go to make a superhero movie, they scrap all of that shit and they just give you the simplest version of that character. And it's the most likable version of that character. And these characters become one-dimensional, simplified versions of a hero who inevitably is always going to win. And who does that sound like? It sounds like Bianca Belair. Storytelling is simple. And you can try to make it what you want to. I get into arguments all the time with people, especially wrestling fans, who try to tell me, like, no, storytelling has evolved. You need intricacy and you need these deep details, and these characters need to be multifaceted, and they don't need to be babyface, and they don't need to be heel. Sure, that works somewhere in the middle of wrestling, but that is not what brings the ratings in, and that is not what sells the t-shirts, and that is not what the television networks want to see. The problem is, storytelling is and forever will be, at its simplest form, good versus evil. And Bianca Belair represents good. That's what she is. The problem is, and this is the problem, and this is why people reach for this idea that we need deeper character depth, but the problem is that good does get boring over time. If good is not properly challenged, then it becomes stale. And the problem isn't that Bianca Belair character doesn't have enough depth. The actual problem is WWE has not done a good job of creating good villains around the superhero they created, right? The narrative that is widely accepted, and for the record, this narrative that's widely accepted about Bianca Belair, I fucking brought that up. I am the first person who started saying out loud that Bianca Belair is much better when she's chasing the title. Now every other content creator and their fucking mom says the same thing and tries to coin it like they fucking made it up. But I was the first guy on this microphone yelling that Bianca Belair is more interesting when she's chasing the title. But that's true. I was right when I said that. Bianca Belair is Superman. She needs better villains. She needs her Lex Luthors. She needs bad guys. She needs more dire circumstances. She doesn't need more character depth. She doesn't need to start doing dirty tactics or be conflicted in like her good mentality. She just needs situational creativity. If you don't have a daughter, I get it. You probably don't understand this, but Bianca Belair is the ultimate role model for little girls. She smiles in the face of adversity. She overcomes the odds. She does all of the things that she's not supposed to do as a person in her position. And here's the thing. I'm not going to even pretend. I can tell you what that means as a father of daughters, but I'm not even going to pretend to tell you like the significance she has within the African-American community, because I'm sure that relationship runs even like emotionally deeper than anything I can understand. So I can tell you as a father what she means, but I can't tell you that on other levels, there are probably deeper connections to Bianca Belair that I don't understand. But what I can tell you, that as far as being a role model goes, as a father of little girls, I don't want my kids looking at Cardi B. I don't want my kids looking up to Ice Spice and people like that. I want my kids to want to be Bianca Belair. So it's funny because when Bianca Belair was in the story with Becky Lynch, heading into WrestleMania a few years ago, nobody was complaining. Becky Lynch was a great villain, and it made Bianca Belair arguably at one point the most likable character in all of professional wrestling. There was a point in time everybody was singing the fucking praises of Bianca Belair, and we don't give Becky Lynch enough credit for being the bad guy that was the catalyst for making Bianca Belair so likable. But I'll go one step farther. I'll put myself under the crosshairs here. Anyone who has listened to this show for a long time will remember that back when Becky and Bianca were doing their thing, there was the whole kind of hair being in play where they were teasing cutting off Bianca's ponytail. And I was the biggest proponent of screaming, cut it off. Let Becky cut it off. If Becky cuts it off, she'll become the biggest heel in the industry. And I wasn't wrong. That absolutely would have happened. But that was me being short-sighted and not understanding, once again, that all wrestling doesn't have to appeal to me. It's not all about what I want to see or what I think makes a character better. I didn't take into account all of the little girls who identify her because of how she looks and her cultural significance. I don't understand what that ponytail means, but it was made very clear to me, my ignorance in not knowing what that meant, and I learned something. And that's cool. It helped me get to this place where I can look at wrestling and say some things are bigger than the story. Some things are bigger than the pop. Some things aren't meant for grown-ass men. That's just the reality. Would Bianca Belair be a more likable character to me if we gave her depth and we gave her all these difficult decisions to make and she was put in these kind of adult, just problem-solving storylines? Sure. But then as wrestling fans, we'd find the next thing to bitch about. So why not keep her as a superhero? The truth is, it is much harder to create a Bianca Belair and a John Cena than it is to create a Kenny Omega. Fuck you, IWC. That's just the truth. That's real. Anybody can get in there and flip around and get dropped on their head. It is hard to become just absolutely immortal in the eyes of children. Someone that kids are infatuated with. Someone that makes their eyes light up. And you don't risk that. You don't risk that booking to make a couple hardcore wrestling fans happy. Now, that doesn't mean, walking that back a little bit, that doesn't mean that you can't find ways to make Bianca Belair's story more appealing through every demo in wrestling. Sure, you can. But once again, it boils down. You need better bad guys. You need better heels. You need better villains. She needs better stories. She needs to be the underdog again. And when the time is right, I imagine that's what our Lord and Savior Triple H is going to do. Now, you guys are going to tell me that Charlotte can't be that heel for her? Let's be patient here. Can we give this a chance? Because obviously, if we're just looking this from the outside as far as long-term booking goes, Bianca's about to buddy up with Charlotte until Charlotte decides to turn on Bianca and go back to her natural state of being a heel, and boom, there it is. There's your story. There's your intricacies. There's your depth of character you're looking for. It's just going to take time. There's levels to this shit. Like, can you take a character like Seth Rollins and make him super twisted up and dynamic, and he's not really a babyface and he's not really a heel? Yeah, that works. That does. But I would argue you that no matter how good Seth Rollins is, he will never in his career be more over than John Cena. And he will never be more marketable than John Cena, because at some point in time, whether it was Vince McMahon, whether it was John Cena, I don't know who it was, somebody decided, John, you're going to be a superhero. You're going to give up some of those things that make you interesting. And there's going to be people who dislike you because of this, but it's also going to elevate you to this immortality within wrestling. And you're going to wear colorful shirts. and you're going to have these catchy slogans, and you're going to use positivity, and you're going to have backpacks, and you're going to have towels, and you're going to have hats, and you're going to essentially sell your soul to the wrestling gods to become immortal. This is something that the IWC just doesn't understand. This is what the IWC can't wrap their head around sometimes, especially when it pertains to AEW. For every Jon Moxley, for every Kenny Omega that the IWC heralds and they think that everybody should love them, the problem is within a company with guys that are talented. Moxley's talented, Omega's talented, but you have to have the other end of the spectrum. You have to have the guys that you can put on the poster that sell the tickets, that make the kids want to come. And I think there was a part of AEW fans and IWC that thought that was Edge. It's not Edge. Edge isn't that guy. And it's not Bryan Danielson. He's not that guy. Here's an example for you guys. This is confusing to IWC, but the reason we as casual fans all talk positively about Britt Baker and her ability to get over is because she's the closest thing that AEW has as a role model for little girls. She's somebody who was very successful in life and did two different things, and we can point to that and go, look, you can be anything you want to be. Just look at Britt Baker. And the IWC is so fucking confused by that because they go, oh, she's bad at wrestling. Yeah, but there's things bigger than just the X's and O's of wrestling that make these characters appealing and sell tickets and cause the ratings to go up. But without that mass appeal, AEW's never going to hit the big numbers that the IWC wants them to hit on a consistent basis. Sure, can you put on one show every 5 years where you haven't been in a city in a real long time and a bunch of people show up? Sure, you can do that, but you're not going to have consistency because no little kid is having AEW birthday parties. There's nobody on the roster. Show me the TikTok videos of the college parties where people are coming, they come down the hallway dressed as their favorite wrestler. That's not happening. How many Jon Moxley and Kenny Omega costumes are on the shelves at Party City? That stuff doesn't happen. But I guarantee you little girls are dressing up like Bianca Belair. I guarantee you go on Instagram on October 31st and you can find tons of little girls dressing up as Bianca Belair. That's just the reality. So Bianca Belair isn't being marketed, to the 40-year-old men, the 30-year-old men, the content creators, the IWC of the world. She's a role model. And she's possibly the best role model that we have in all of entertainment. Like, name anybody in all of entertainment. You go music, movies, sports. Name one person that is a better person you can point at as an influence to little girls, and I will argue you. Then take that line. Take that idea, that line of thought, and explain to me why you would fuck that up by giving her character some kind of edge. It absolutely doesn't make sense. And if you can't wrap your head around that, like I said, number one, you probably don't have a daughter. Number two, you don't understand marketing. And number three, you don't understand that at the end of the day, wrestling is a fucking business. All right, last question of the week here. Nerdy D, how do you feel about seeing Logan Paul back in a WWE ring, and how would you feel if he was the United States champion after Crown Jewel? Look, I think, here's the truth. Logan Paul is better than 90% of wrestlers in AEW and WWE combined, especially if we're just going off of complete, well-rounded character and talking on a microphone. He's better than most. I think in the ring, he's actually as good or better than at least 80% of wrestlers. But hate it or love it, man, Logan Paul is perfect for WWE, and WWE is a perfect fit for Logan Paul. I think that all of the celebrity influencer boxing shit, I think that's coming to an end. I think it's starting to get exposed. I think people have had their fun. They're going to get tired of it. And I think that some of those influencers are going to be looking for landing spots. And I think Logan's just a little bit ahead of the game because WWE is ultimately, it is what all that boxing shit is. It's just far more organized. So somebody who is able to navigate that territory like Logan Paul, we know he fits perfectly inside of WWE. And here's the truth. Logan Paul, natural heel. But he appeals to so many people outside of the wrestling world. Similar to what Pat McAfee does for WWE. These guys bring in this secondary audience. When Logan fights in boxing or WWE, I imagine that WWE can look directly at the numbers and see that there's this weird influx of impulsive fans that watch professional wrestling. And this is similar to the same tactic that people like Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift do for each other in their respective worlds. And now, I bet nobody thought that I could sneak in a Taylor Swift reference on a wrestling podcast, but I did it, and I'm that goddamn good at this. That's why I'm able to do this. But I think, to be honest with you, I think that his promo this week was spot on. I think that WWE trusts Logan Paul on a microphone more than they trust probably 90% of the roster. I really believe. I believe when Triple H Logan go do a promo, I don't think there's a lot of thought put into it. I think they let him go out there and speak. And as fucking weird as this sounds, because this is going to sound like a real weird statement until I clarify it, Logan Paul doesn't have an ego when it comes to professional wrestling. He's just purely an entertainer. I honestly don't think Logan Paul gives two shits about winning and losing. I think he literally wants to entertain the fans and he wants to make headlines. And for somebody who outside of the wrestling world has literally made a career out of having ego, this makes him such a dangerous tool for an entertainment company. He is what everybody wants Darby Allin to be, except that Darby Allin can't appeal to people outside of the depressed IWC fans that think it's okay to wear leggings under your jorts. It's not. It's not okay. Now, I was having a conversation earlier with somebody about Pat McAfee and how he tweeted that he put out a tweet that said he hadn't re-signed with College Game Day. And to make a long story short, I think that there's certain people in entertainment that reach a level of fame within their kind of homemade community that makes them feel like they're almost invincible to the rest of the world, especially the rest of like the entertainment community. Like let's take Pat McAfee. He has a great YouTube show. So I think there's a part of him that starts to believe, look, I can go on College Game Day and that's going to translate. Everybody will love me. Then you start to see all these reports. You see all these Twitter lists come out where people are saying College Game Day fans are not a fan of Pat McAfee and they just don't appreciate who he is and the character that he plays. And in turn, I think that this ends up putting people like Pat McAfee and Logan Paul in spots where they do things that ultimately, at the end of the day, they may not find fun. And sometimes the money is enough to make a person go, fuck it, I'll just keep doing it. But at other times, I think there's a comfort in returning back to that less hostile environment that appreciates who you are. And so like what I'm getting to here is I think that wrestling fandom for the most part outside of the loud but small IWC community that exists on the internet, I think that for the most part, us as a wrestling community, I like to shout us out. We're a pretty accepting world. We allow people the opportunity to come in, and if you appreciate the world of pro wrestling, we are very open-armed. We welcome you in. And I think WWE fans have done this for Pat McAfee. They show him love when he comes back. And I think that Pat McAfee, in turn, genuinely enjoys when he is a part of WWE programming. And I think that College Game Day for someone like Pat McAfee has turned into a job. He's starting to feel the pressure of what it is when people don't just absolutely love you. Now, take all that I just said and relate that back to Logan Paul. Logan Paul is a natural-born entertainer. And up until this Dylan Dennis shit, I think he was able to create worlds in this celebrity influencer boxing that were fun. But I think this last run around with Dylan Dennis, I think it lost the fun and it got real fast. And so I think when Logan Paul looks around post boxing match, he goes, shit, WWE itches all of those feelings that I get. It's there. Would he box again for the right amount of money? Sure, I think so. A legacy opponent like Conor McGregor? Sure, I bet he does. But I think Logan this time ran back to WWE because it's safe. Because it's a great place for him to do what he does best, but it's safe. Nobody in WWE is going to drag his fiance through the mud. But he can still come here and be an over-the-top entertainer and get those same reactions that kind of make him feel alive. So I would like to see Logan Paul as United States champion. Yeah, I think Logan Paul is the type of guy who will show up. He'll show up as much as Roman Reigns. I think that Logan Paul would make a committed effort to be in WWE, especially as long as he's holding a championship title. Now, does that mean he's going to be live every week? Not necessarily. But I think he'd be an active participant in promoting his matches and promoting premium live events. It's an interesting dynamic that if he's holding the United States title, why does he have to be on Monday Night Raw or Friday Night SmackDown? Why can't he do his promotion on Impulsive or on his podcast or the appearances that he makes outside of WWE? He's still promoting the match. He's still bringing in audience. I think it's an interesting dynamic to think about that. You know, guys like Roman disappears and he's gone and we don't see him. He's not promoting anywhere. But what if Logan disappears from WWE television, but he's carrying around that United States Championship everywhere he goes? And now that championship showing up on TMZ and it's showing up on YouTube and Impulsive and all these different people are being exposed to the wrestling version of Logan Paul. And there's still the fact that I'm hanging my hat on the idea that Nick Aldis is building a new authority faction, and Logan Paul would fit right in as a member of this faction because there's a cheat code that he could access of not having to be there every week because Nick Aldis could fill in and he could protect him and it could be part of the story. Oh, he's Nick Aldis, he's his little baby boy. Nick Aldis isn't going to make him show up. He gets special treatment. That kind of stuff works, and that kind of stuff, while it's viewed as a negative when a guy doesn't show up, it can be viewed as a positive if it's worked into the storyline correctly. And at the end of the day, if all of this leads to an explosive feud that puts LA Knight over at WrestleMania 40, then hell yeah, count me into all of this, the whole Logan Paul experience. Because the reality is, all this has to be is better than what the last couple of years have been for the United States Championship. Theory was a lame duck champion. Like, once they fucked his gimmick up, there was nothing interested about Austin Theory being the United States champion. And I don't think that's Austin Theory's fault. I think that was WWE's fault for taking away a gimmick that was absolutely over from a heel's perspective. Then you got to look at the attempt to have Seth Rollins and Bobby Lashley elevate the title. That failed miserably. They never, they abandoned that as quick as they started that. And then last, you got to look at Rey Mysterio. Rey Mysterio's not setting the world on fire as the United States champion. It's fun. Is it possibly leading to something with Santos Escobar? Sure. Is Santos Escobar possibly the next in line? But once again, that's a roll of a dice, right? Like, are we positive that if Santos Escobar wins the United States championship, that he's going to get over with the fans? I think it's a roll of dice. I think he could. I think it's a high possibility he could. But Logan Paul's a for sure thing. Logan Paul gets that belt, people are going to talk. So at this point, put the belt on Logan Paul. Let's see what the hell happens, and you can always rip it off of him if it all goes to shit. Let's talk about some news before we get out of here. All right, the first story I want to talk about, and I can't make this shit up. This is an article that's actually on wrestling news sites. There's an article circulating that Darby Allin thinks his shoulder is fractured. He thinks his shoulder is fractured. Now, I don't love to be the guy who shits on AEW every week. I don't love to be the guy that makes fun of AEW wrestlers on a weekly basis. But you guys, they got to quit teeing me up like this. You got to quit talking and saying these things that give me the ammo to get on this microphone and say the things that pop into my head. You think you fractured your shoulder. You think. How do you think this, Darby Allin? Does AEW not have a medical staff that you could go see? Is there not a way for you to figure that out? Does Tony Khan not hear this? Does Tony Khan not hear you say this out loud and think, shit, I got to get this under control real fast? So if you don't know what happened, Darby Allin was literally quoted at a Nitro Circus show as saying into a microphone to the crowd, I'm not doing good. My shoulder, I think it's fractured. I kind of messed up my elbow pretty bad, and last week I had to go train to climb Mount Everest. So I haven't really given my shoulder any time to rest. But when I heard that Nitro Circus was coming through Texas, I had to come. What do y'all expect me to say when I read shit like that? Like, what do y'all really want me to say? Y'all want me to let this go? Like, where do you start when you talk about articles that are written by journalists that are about this? I mean, look. We all saw the bump that he took from Christian, where he went ass and back first into the wrong side of the steel stairs, right? We all saw that. We all saw, and we cringed and said how fucking stupid that was. But supposedly we have to get these spots approved by Tony Khan, and he keeps approving these spots. I can't make this up. So here's the remainder of this story. Darby Allin went to Nitro Circus, and he rode a fucking preschool big wheel tricycle because he's small enough to fit in those things if you remember them from your childhood. He rode it down like a 50-foot ramp, shot up through the air, did a backflip through like rings of fire, and then literally landed on his bad shoulder. I don't have to make these things up. These are real things. This is real life. These are real things that AEW wrestlers are doing. These are the guys that Tony Khan chooses to employ in his company. These are the heroes of the IWC. There's a famous quote that I know that says, "We are at least in part the sum of our heroes and the things that we admire." Understanding that quote makes understanding the IWC so much easier. Like Jesus. Second story. This isn't really as much news as it's just something that I read and I thought it was really funny to talk about. So Tony Khan last week teased a dream match announcement to try to get people to watch Rampage. I don't know if you don't follow Tony Khan on Twitter. It's the greatest thing in the world. I just found it like a couple weeks ago, and now it's what I do for a hobby on a regular basis. Is I just look at Tony Khan's Twitter to see the crazy shit that he's saying, and he never disappoints me. So he came out and he said that I'm going to make an announcement. I'm going to make a tweet about an announcement that I'm going to do on Rampage, and everybody should tune in, which they don't. Nobody watches Rampage. And the announcement ended up being that the dream match was going to be a collision match between Andrade and Bryan Danielson. This is a match that we've seen twice before in WWE. Now, like I said, I can only imagine at this point when Tony Khan sits down and he's like, I got to promote AEW shows. What goes through his head before he tweets things out? Like, is he deliberately misleading? Does he know at this point that we're all laughing at him? Or is there a part of him that thinks like the few hundred IWC people that hype him up on the internet that like he's doing a good thing? Like, how many times can you go online and say you have a big announcement before they're not big anymore? Like, you can't just start taking any two wrestlers on your roster and framing that as a dream match. That's why your ratings are failing, Tony Khan. I don't mean to just come down on you all the time, but there's certain things as far as marketing goes, and having studied marketing, I understand the more you do something, the less impactful it is. And a dream match, Tony Khan, a dream match is something that we can only see in our dreams. It's not some shit we've seen twice before. When they talk about CM Punk versus Stone Cold being a dream match, it's because we don't believe that could really happen. And when it comes to be, holy shit, we lose our minds. When you show us or you tell us about a match that's been done twice in WWE, that's not a dream match anymore, Tony Khan. And on a separate topic, this is just popping into my head, but a separate topic. It works here because it's all in the Tony Khan universe. And I'll quick disclaimer, I never watched Impact Wrestling. I never watched TNA Wrestling, so I am an outsider to all of this Impact going back to TNA and how important that is. And a lot of people say they grew up watching that. So if this is, sensitive to any of those people, I'm sorry. But let's have some fun here. What if Tony Khan somehow was the person who bought Impact Wrestling and he's the guy turning it back into TNA Wrestling? Does that not feel like the most Tony Khan thing possible? And let's take it one step farther. Let's take it one step. Sting's about to retire. What if when Sting retires, Tony Khan makes him the GM of TNA? Like, these are things that cross my mind. Like I said, I don't have any information. It's all speculation. But like, what if? I told you guys a couple weeks ago, Tony Khan's going to come for all of your favorite niche brands of wrestling. As the AEW brand sinks, he's going to grab everything he can. He's a wrestling black hole. He's going to grab TNA. He's going to grab New Japan Pro. He's going to latch on to anything he can get, and he's going to pull it under the water with him. I'm not saying this is real. I'm just saying, hey, what if? What if someone does a little bit of investigation and they find out that some like offshore holding company that Tony Khan has made a play for TNA and there were some backroom deals that happened and Tony Khan is playing on the nostalgia strings again? What if? Just what if? What if Tony Khan literally bought TNA so that CM Punk couldn't sign there and wrestle again? You have to explore all possibilities when you hear things like this. Last story of the week. There's a story going around that the WWE has screen tested new tag team titles at last week's Raw tapings. It is said that the two titles that were tested were One was a black strap with a solid gold plate, and the other one was a black and gold, or was a black strap with gold and silver plates. I mean, I'm telling you, man, our savior Triple H is going to fix everything that is wrong with WWE. We are about to go into a renaissance of WWE. I think the next couple of years, the Triple H era of wrestling is going to be looked back extremely fondly before it's all said and done. But man, new tag team titles, we've been talking about this, long overdue. I want 2 new sets. Let's do WWE titles on one show. Let's do World Tag Team titles on the other show. And let's get this thing cracking like it's supposed to be. I'm hoping maybe these 2 color sets were them testing out 2 sets of belts. I don't know. Maybe they're just trying to pick one's best. I'm even okay. If we just unify the 1 set of belts and stop carrying 4 titles around, that's best for business. I don't like the idea of tag teams traveling back and forth between shows when you have 2 different GMs. I think it gets a little messy. I like the idea of having 2 different sets of tag team champions. That just, to me, it makes it easier. But I see the IWC calling for WWE to go back to like an old set of like tag team titles that they reminisce about. But that's not how WWE does business these days. I'm sure what we're going to get is going to be an updated version of something we've seen, something that brings back some nostalgia, but it's going to have a big old WWE logo slapped right in the middle of it because that's what they do. They are all about branding. They are all about marketing. They are all about making sure that you know that title you bought and that you were carrying around, that is a WWE title. Was there not a rumored like rendering that bounced around a few months ago that was similar to the tag team titles we have right now, very similar to that with the round plates, but it had a WWE logo? I'm gonna have to look. I'm gonna look for that because I believe there was a rendering of a title that had a big WWE logo in the middle of it. And I hope just to finish off the show, I hope we introduce new tag team titles for the women too, and they can just mirror the men's or be similar, but because the women's title are hideous. But that's all I have for you this week. Make sure to watch the Casual Wrestling Podcast. We didn't film it last week. As I said last week, it may take a couple weeks off. I'm getting some people together. There's some things in the works, and that show is going to come back with an ensemble cast. So once that comes back, it will be a little different. It'll be fun. It sometimes feels like it's too similar to all the other shows. So I'm going to do it where it gets a lot of different opinions in it. So make sure to look out for that. Look out for the Champ and the Chick, which posts every Monday on YouTube. And then the Monday Night Raw post show, which posts every Tuesday night at midnight. Hit the like button. Share this episode with somebody you know. And until next time, keep it casual, my friends. I'm tapping out.
Step in the ring, if you ready, let's go. Hey, Casual Wrestling Community Show. You already know, talking WWE. Keep it rolling and hosted by Notorious Nerdy D. Dope show that you gon' find. Tune in cause it's online. Hit 'em with a figure 4 leg lock, power driver or clothesline. We bringing that heat like the show. But